Now that we've wrapped up this part of the shoot, I'm really happy with the way the shot is looking. I've used the Chimera with the Hensel light. This is kind of a mid-range in terms of price point. Let's switch it out with a new light and modifier. Well, we've made a change and we're going with a far more entry-level pack. We've got the Pulsey Buff modifier here. This is their Octabox, and we put a grid insert on it. We're going to kind of focus that light a little bit in order to make it feel more like morning light kind of streaming in. And it's on an Alien Bees 1600 watt-second pack. That's a monoblock, so again, power pack, flash tube are all one compact little unit. Again, this is very entry-level, but let's see what we get with it. A little bit more direction, without question, and a lot more power. So let's back this off. All right, so let's lower some power. I'm going to go down to about 1/16, and I'm going to dump it. And what that means when I dump it is I'm firing the capacitor to get all of the juice out of it so that it comes up to the new level that I've set it at. I don't want it to have that extraneous power in there, so the setting might still be a little bit high. These are not as accurate because it's a slider. So I can't hit the exact same mark every time. It's not like you can dial into the 10th, which you can on the other packs. So it's a little bit more, free-flowing. But quite honestly, it's a nice quality of light, and in many ways it's giving me that good kind of morning rake coming across. You can see though that I've lost a lot of the light on the front of the food because it's more focused. We're not catching as much with that fill card and bringing it back. I will say I like some of the stuff that's going on in the background. So let's go back and take a quick look. It's a little bit more directional than we had before with the Octabox. I still like it though. It's just a little bit of raking light coming through. Let's go ahead and futz with this front card, and I think we'll have something pretty nice. There we go. It's actually not a bad shot at all. I kind of like it. I will say though that the quality is lower. We've had a couple in here for a couple of years and they're already breaking. They're going to have to be replaced. So they're not a real permanent solution the way some of the other packs are, will they'll last 15, 20, 30 years. It's a little bit more temporary, but for the price point, it's really hard to beat. So out of curiosity's sake, while we have this here, I like the quality of that light. And remember, it's got this grid insert, which is just giving you a little bit more direction. Let's pull that grid insert out, take a look at it, because it'll be more of a true comparison to what we did with the other light. Then we may put this back in, but I just want to take a quick look and see what happens. Love the sound of Velcro in the morning. So this is going to do a couple things. It's going to make the light spread out a little bit because now it doesn't have those baffles that are kind of directing it, that kind of gridded feel. And it's also going to increase the power a little bit since the light is a little bit freer. It's not restricted. You can definitely see the exposure jump up quite a bit. It gets a little hotter. It's focusing the light a little bit more, it's adding contrast, it's giving me a better read in the plate and on the food, so I'm going to go with it. So now that I've got the shot the way I like it, I want to do one last variation where I'm going to add honey to it. This is something I want to do last because this is going to dramatically change what's going on with the food, and it's not going to last very long. So I want to hold this until the very end when I've got the entire set exactly how I want it. All right, so this is something I really have to be cautious with. I'm not going to get many chances. Let's quickly see what that looks like. I like it. It's just adding a little bit to the entirety of the scene. I'm just going to continue to increase it just a bit. Right now what I'm doing is I'm kind of going back and forth over a couple of spots because I want to get it to be a thicker, more visible pool or run. I'm not going far from my camera because I want to be able to hop out here at a moment's notice. And that's looking pretty good. The other thing that I might do is I might want to add 2 or 3 of these shots together, depending on how the honey goes across. It'll tend to flatten out after a little while. So I may need to combine a couple of shots in order to really get the look that I want. Ooh, I like that. I've got a nice pool of honey down there on the side. However, I've got a crumb that looks really weird. Let's try that again. Not bad. Let me take a look at it closer. I think I'm going to want to get rid of that crumb altogether, which I could do in post, but I can also do it now. So let's go ahead and do it now. So a simple movement like grabbing this thing with a forceps and twisting it, because it's got honey on it, it's going to drip. So I'm twisting it right over that pool of honey, letting what was on it drip off. It's not going to go anywhere else on my plate. So just think about that kind of stuff. Be smart with the way you handle your food. I like it with the honey. It just adds a little bit of information, a little bit of something that I think is kind of nice. I'm going to add one more little pool in back, just right around there to give a little bit of tone, and I think I'm going to be in good shape. Nice. Adds a little tone back there. I like it. All right. I think that's done. Now, let's just play a little bit. I want to see what is going to happen when we add this little bit of an extension tube on there to the 85. It's going to allow us to get in a little bit tighter. In fact, a whole lot tighter. All right, exact same shot. I've added the extension tube, so that 85 is now getting in really tight. It's diminished the amount of light because it's adding this distance between the rear element and the CCD, so it's kind of sucking up that light. It's making everything a little bit dark. So we're going to pump up our light, adjust our crop a little bit, and see what we got. So you can see what that does. Here's our original shot with the 85. Now we've added the teleconverter or the extension tube in order to get us closer. It's definitely making a difference, which I kind of like. So I've got this 85 millimeter that I use all the time. I use it on people. I love shooting with this lens. It's beautiful. Now I can make it a little bit more of a macro lens by adding the extension tube, which is nice because I've got versatility in that lens. I don't have to go out and buy a macro lens. I can use the 85 with this extension tube, which is significantly cheaper. Why don't we play around with this a little bit where I'm going to adjust my camera so it's a little bit more how I want for the final shot using this teleconverter. And I also want to see how close I can get to this thing. It's a nice little test. Now today I've switched and I'm using my Really Right Stuff ball head. It's nice and smooth. I really like this thing. You can get in, do very small movements with it. It's kind of nice. I like it. So one of the things that's kind of interesting about this, as we're giving versatility to the lens, when I had the 85 before without an extension tube, I was in at its minimum focal distance. So you saw a lot more of the set and kind of what's going on. With some of the editorial stuff, that might be really appropriate if you're working for a restaurant, you want to kind of show some of the ambiance and get a feel for the restaurant. Sometimes with food though, particularly for portfolio work, you might want to come in a little bit. If I look at my portfolio, and a lot of the comments that I get about my book is that it's really kind of in your face, that we're right in on top of the food, and it almost has a graphic quality. I've heard a lot of art directors say that about my work. that somehow the portfolio, it almost looks graphic. And it has a lot to do with the fact that I come in really tight with these macro lenses. I think this is a cool way for you to go because it gives you the option to have, you know, a standard lens, but then make it a little bit macro by going with a teleconverter. So now that we've done that, and I'm happy with it, I'm going to test this thing out a little bit more and see just how close we can get using the extension tube, because this is interesting. Wow. So there's that graphic quality I was talking about. When you look at this, as we come in, this lens definitely is getting in a lot tighter now that I've got the extension tube on it, and I really like this. But you see the change in the whole feel of the image. All of a sudden, as we're getting rid of some of the environment, we're getting it nice and tight on the food, and it's becoming really graphic. You see the shape of the food, you see the shape of what's going on there, and it's completely different feel. When you look at these two side by side, it's going to feel night and day. So I'm going to push this a little further. I'm going to see how close I can get and just kind of play around. This has a nice feel to it. I'm liking this lens quite a bit, particularly how shallow it is. You know, again, we talked about creating a little bit of atmosphere, creating a little bit of mystery. Shallow depth of field, without question, is a great way to do that. When the background goes soft, when you don't know the detail of everything, that makes the viewer's mind question, what are those details? Again, you're engaging them, you're making them think. So when you're in this tight, really macro like this, a little movement goes a long way. All of a sudden, just a slight move can mean a huge difference. Wow, look how tight we're getting with that lens. That looks pretty good. In fact, let's pull the crop off now. I want to see what's going on. This is really pretty cool because you really see the details in here. I'm going to keep my crop on in terms of wanting to maintain my 14 by 22. But I want to take a look and take advantage of the entirety of the sensor if I can. Wow, it's pretty nice. Now, one thing you'll see, I've created this really dark spot by coming in nice and tight with this lens and moving around, seeing that coffee cup. Coffee's just creating a real dark spot up top. That doesn't look good at all. I love what's going on down here, so I'm going to focus on that a little bit more. I'm going to pull this coffee cup back and out because I don't want that in there. It's just pulling the eye. The eye dies at that spot, and that's the last thing I want. I'm going to make a couple of adjustments. I think this is going to be a cool shot. Now, something interesting that you'll find here, when I'm looking in the camera, just the pressure that I have on here is creating a slight flex. When you're this macro, that actually has an effect on your framing. So I had my arm in here and I had it down on that camera arm as I was focusing, and it made a difference in my composition. So I'm going to try to be as light as possible and just work with the ball head, not allow myself to affect my camera or my tripod or my camera stand in this case. So that's something to keep in mind too. I like what's going on in terms of the food and the way it looks, but now that I've come in tight like this, my main hero Fig is almost dead center in the frame, and I can't stand that. It's way too symmetrical. It just doesn't feel right. So I'm going to swing the camera a little bit. I'm just going to rotate it. I'm probably going to pick up that coffee mug again, so I'm going to want to move that. But I'm just going to make a small movement here because I want to push that off center a bit. It's nice. I like it. I even like the shadow that coffee is creating now. I'm just going to push it out a skosh because it's just creating a little bit of a dark spot in that upper left corner. Boom, much nicer. Just a little change like that, it made a big difference. It's now pushing the eye back in. I've got the shadow from the coffee cup, which is helping to define the directionality of the light. and it's pushing our eye back in. I dig it. And what's nice about this, I have a couple of variations. If I go back to my original shot, that's the 85 where I'm really pulled back and I see the environment, it gives me a different sense than here where I'm in really tight and kind of have this graphic element. To me, this works a little bit better for my portfolio because it's more in keeping with my style. But I know that the shot where I'm set back a little bit and I see the environment is far and away going to be more appropriate for the restaurant because they're going to want to have that feeling that, you know, kind of shows the entire atmosphere as well as the dish. That's it. I really like that shot. We're going to go back one more look at it. It's my final shot. I think one of the things that's really interesting about this section of the tutorial is what we did with the lens. We took an 85mm, which is a very typical lens almost every photographer has in their kit. By using an extension tube, we made it like a lens that photographers who are shooting macro food would use. Having versatility with the lens by having an extension tube on there is a really solid way to go.